Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Breaking Habits, Leveraging Smart Braking to Reduce Livestock Rollover Crash Risk. We have an amazing group of fellows together, which I'll leave Anthony and Adam and Athol to introduce themselves as we move forward. Next slide, please. Housekeeping today, webinar's going to go for around 45. We have got an hour in there, so we can get 15 minutes in there. I just noticed it's sliced over there, Adam. What will happen is 24 hours from now, we will send out a recording of the webinar and a PDF as well. And next slide. As mentioned, we'll make this as interactive as possible. We love your questions coming through. The chat box is open as well, so throw things in there. But the key thing we want is put your questions into the question box. You can see down there, they'll go up. And as we move through, the panelists will be able to see your questions as they go through. If they relate to the topic, they'll take them on note and answer them during the webinar. If not, we'll hold them through to the end because we have plenty of time to discuss it. So over to you guys.
Good morning, or it's probably just good afternoon now, everyone. Thanks, Jerome. Anthony Boyle, Executive Director of ALRTA. Thanks for joining us. So the purpose of today, look, it's important that we understand what brought ALRTA to the project here, and I want to first show some appreciation to NTI, our industry partner, and the Australian government for funding this project. The aim is to reduce incidents in rollovers by promoting practical use of ESC or telematic data to influence driver behaviours. We all know what EBS braking is, but how do we use it? We don't understand that. We know it's a box under the trailer. We know there's a plug in front of it, but how do we use that? So that's basically the first purpose of it. It's to increase driver safety and road safety. Animal welfare. Initially, our industry had an exemption from ESC in trailers. We now are embracing it, and we're finding it to be an animal welfare tool. So we want to understand that better, and the economic impact. And by that I mean the economics of accidents on the road, what it costs us, what it costs the economy, and what it costs us personally. So that's what we're hoping to explore today, and hopefully bring us along the journey. So thanks so much to the guys that have done all of the work along the process. So first you'll be hearing from Adam Gibson. Probably one of the most passionate people you're going to ever meet in your life, I reckon, Adam. He's NTI's Transport and Logistics Risk Engineer, and he's been the lead on this this project, and he's the author of the annual National Truck Accident Research Centre report. So if anyone lives and breathes accidents and data, it's Adam. So thanks for being a champion of this project, Adam, and we look forward to see what you present. Athol Carter is Compliance Manager at Fraser's Livestock Transport in Queensland. He's the second most passionate person you're ever going to meet. So Athol puts a lot of work into our industry, and following up from this project, Athol is the chair of our ALRTA PBS committee. So part of the information from this project, Athol will actually be taking forward nationally for us to review as part of our PBS projects going forward, as far as issues and things like that arise from this. So hopefully we can use that and the data that we've already achieved through this project to see some results with government and manufacturers. So I'll hand it over to Adam. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for that very warm introduction. Athol, you'll have to lift your game if you want to bump me from the top spot for most passionate in the industry. You've got a goal there. So what are we going to talk about during this session? Firstly, why is this topic worth talking about? Why am I so passionate on this, and why has the project been, in my view, just so brilliant and so powerful? What are the technologies we're talking about? Like, what are the things that we're discussing here? And then how do we make them work, particularly looking at the examples from Athol and Fraser's experience in this space. So livestock is hard. And I know in this, looking through the audience list, there's a lot of people who know this, but it's worth calling out. We don't just have the complexities of transport and logistics, which is hard enough at the best of times. We've got that overlaid with some of the most challenging operating environments. We're not just tootling up and down the Hume every day. Animal welfare and animal handling issues. So our workers in livestock transport face a bunch of risks at both ends of the journey, in addition to the risks we're mostly going to talk about today during the journey. That load moves. We can't, hopefully, strap cattle and other livestock down. So we have a fundamentally dynamic load. And yeah, the road network they're operating on, starts at bad and goes downhill from there. This freight task, again, doesn't run up and down beautiful concrete roads with wide shoulders. We're lucky if there's bitumen, and where it is, it's almost sometimes worse because at least with dirt roads, they can run a grader over them. So it's a very challenging environment. So we've got all of this in play. But when I look at our claims data, and that captures certain types of harm, so it doesn't capture those workers injured in animal handling incidents at either end, so it doesn't go to that livestock loading ramp space. But when I look at my data, what I see are the same crashes happening over and over again, which are single vehicle, untripped rollover crashes. We know what these look like. Anyone that's been in this industry for long at all will have seen either the pictures or for many of you, been to the accident scenes. You've got one of our combinations, you've got a B double laying on its side, halfway round a long 80k an hour sweeper. It's probably not even that far from the edge of the road. It might only be a meter over the fog line where it's bitumen, or something equivalent where it's dirt. And it's not a ran off road crash that has resulted in a rollover. So those most commonly sleep driving crashes, so fatigue related crashes, are also a risk in livestock. They're the second risk, though. You're looking at something in the high 30, low 40% of our serious livestock crashes are these single vehicle untripped rollovers, compared to something in the sort of 20% range for those fatigue/sleep driving ran off road type crashes. And what's worth calling out here is when I chat with drivers, you'll very commonly, almost universally, get someone that will say, if you can't feel it through the seat of your pants, you shouldn't be driving a truck. It's an inexperience problem. It simply does not stack up when you look at our data. Average age for the drivers having these events is in the mid to late 40s. They've generally got, I think the average is 14 years of experience in the license category of the vehicle they were driving at the time of the crash. So HC experience for HC drivers, MC experience for MC drivers, or MC combination vehicles that are having these crashes. So you've got drivers with more than a decade of experience that have that sort of hopeful calmness that comes with age, and they're still laying these combinations on their side and having these very serious events. And it poses a very real risk for those truck occupants. The number's gotten slightly better over the last 2 years. It was sitting around 1 in 40, 1 in 41 of those single vehicle rollover crashes, the occupant of the truck would be killed. It's now out to about 1 in 50, but that is still an unacceptable number, particularly given the frequency of these events in the livestock transport space. And so, yes, you'll always see me out in industry and talking to the general public around those truck and car crashes and how we're doing everything we can in that space, and it's about the car driver behavior. But for these crashes in our industry here in livestock, the person that is has the most control over the safety of the driver is the driver themselves. So I want to talk about the technologies quickly here, because we just use the catch-all of smart braking a lot in this work. And in chatting with drivers, frontline managers, and business owners in this space, I actually challenge what Anthony says. I actually don't think the knowledge of what the particular technologies are and what they do is actually well understood. There's acronym soup here that tends to be absolutely overwhelming. And I want to break it down just quickly on this. The first one, and this has been around for a while and really just should be there and working all of the time, is ABS, anti-lock braking systems. All it does, wheel speed sensor monitors wheel speed. If it sees the wheels on one axle or axle group stop while the rest are all still moving, it releases them and reapplies them. In this space, 2 reasons you want it. One, you come over that crest and there's 500 sheep on the road in front of you. You're unladen. It's damp in the morning, a bit of dew on the road. You push that brake pedal and all of a sudden everything's locked up and stepping sideways. That's not a happy place. The second part, as a fleet owner or a fleet manager, is, what does a triaxle grip worth of tires cost when they start looking like that? So there's a lot of reasons to want ABS, and it should just be universal by this point. It shouldn't be really something we're still needing to actively talk about, but it probably is. The next one is EBS, electronic braking systems. What this does is augment that traditional pneumatic signal for the brake pedal, so the control line running between your trailers, with an electronic signal. So it adds on, the pneumatic signal is still there, and if anything stops working, it just falls back to being a traditional dumb pneumatic brake system. Now, there's two reasons we want this. One, near instant braking across our combinations, which is particularly powerful in Australia, where we have triples and quads running around out to 60 meters long, which is interesting because the technology comes out of Europe, where they think a single is a big truck. And so we can have every brake on the combination come on at once. For a long time, you'll have heard drivers talking about using hand controls to brake from the rear of the combination to settle it down. I would say that there's one thing better than braking from the rear, and that's braking everywhere at once. And that's what this delivers. The second reason this is powerful is it means that it enables a bunch of other technologies, electronic load sensing, electronic stability control, by having that ability to individually modulate brakes. It's like having, 70 brake pedals and being able to individually control them all in real time. It lets us do a lot of other smart features as well. And that nicely takes me to the main focus of this body of work, which is electronic stability control. You'll also see roll stability control, trailer stability control. There's, again, acronym soup here. I'm just going to bundle it up into one acronym there with ESC. What this technology does is it speaks directly, absolutely directly, to that key risk of single vehicle untripped rollovers that I talked about earlier. This is, I used the example at the South Australian Livestockers Conference last weekend or weekend before, that this is, for us as a technology solution, like being on a burning aeroplane, handing out parachutes. Like it is the thing that speaks to the biggest risk we have here most directly. How does it work? It monitors wheel speed sensors as well as lateral acceleration, so it can feel how fast you're going through a corner. When it senses high lateral Gs at speed, it just applies the lightest little brake, just enough to take up the slack, get the shoes out touching the drums, and then it watches the wheel speed. So that first little 5% application, they call it a level 1 stability control intervention. If it then sees the wheels on the inside of the trailer suddenly slowing down, that's a very bad sign. That means those wheels are coming off the ground. They're no longer being pushed along by the vehicle. At that point, it will then brake the outside tires, the ones that have all the weight on them, pull energy out of the system and stabilize the vehicle. And it is exceptionally powerful at doing that. I've got a great video with Paul Fellows from Fellows Transport in Deniliquin on the skid pan showing how effective that technology is. This is the thing that is the difference between your truck pulling back into the depot at the end of the day or looking like that picture there. Except there's a lot of people, I'm surprised I'm not getting bombarded yet in the Q&A or the chat box, that will already know that we haven't had a great experience with these technologies in the livestock transport space. That we've had negative driver feedback. We've had just driver resistance to change, even without the negative feedback. And so we've got a lot of work to do to make this work reliably. The first thing we need to have is it actually needs to be there. And that's going to happen organically to a large degree. Any trailer after, don't hold me on the date here, I should have put a note, I think it's November of 2021, but maybe someone from the brake space can jump into the chat box for me and correct me on the ADR 38 mandate for a roll stability function. The next thing we need is we need it plugged in, and that's a lot about taking our drivers and our people on the journey, and Athel will touch on that a lot in his presentation. And then we need it to actually be working. We need it to reliably operate in service and be repaired when things do go wrong. And there's a lot of work in the project materials about that part there. How do we keep this reliable in service? November 2019, thank you, Glenn. So the mandate for ADR 38 for a roll stability function, which is electronic stability control on our trailers, is November 2019. So any equipment you've bought post then, you've already paid for this and you will continue to pay for this. And that offends me in a different way, which is I want to see our industry get value where money's being spent. And I don't think we're there at the moment. So now I want to hand over to Athol, and you can talk us through the Frasers journey. So Frasers were one of our 2 initial case study operators in this project, along with Betts Transport out of Walker in New South Wales. And someone summed up actually Walker to me very well. It's where they manufacture all of Australia's corners, was the observation. I thought that was rather good. And Frasers have very much lived the industry experience with this technology, good and bad. Right, I'll hand over to you there now, Athol. And actually, before I go, I will very strongly get in that Q&A box as we're going through, because very much the value out of this session will come from that Q&A box as much as it comes from our presenters.
All right, thanks, Adam. Thank you, Adam, and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, on behalf of Frasers, I'd certainly like to pass on our appreciations and thanks to everyone that has been a part of this project. It's certainly been a fantastic journey and an even better working group. And I truly believe that we've certainly produced some great information here for the entire industry, no matter what freight type that you're carting. So EBS doesn't discriminate just between livestock versus the tanker and grain, etc. So it's certainly it's here to stay. But look, our journey, I suppose, it came out of a fleet of 150 trailers. Obviously, we're always turning over equipment. And as new equipment is being bought into the business, comes with new technology that is more often than not mandated. We don't have an option now as a purchaser to select what we like in our specification. More often than not, it's now mandated by various Australian design rules. But look, I suppose, take a step back, and the original intent of this project was to use telematics data to reduce the incidence of livestock rollovers, and we saw that as an opportunity to park that first bit for a minute. We need to and dial that right back and understand the why. What is it that we have? What trailer has it? And if it is fitted, how do we fix it? So that was, I suppose, that's the background for us. But it also came first and foremost from driver feedback. We've got this new trailer. It's plugged in. The brakes are absolutely aggressive, sharp, putting us through the windscreen, and automatically I thought, well, that's not good. Everyone loves a great driving experience, whether that's in a nice car or in trucks, and you shouldn't have to go out on the road and feel like you're being thrown around. Front of mind straight away was our freight, and that's our live animals with our cattle, sheep, and pigs that we're transporting every day. So we found that snappiness and in the braking, and it just wasn't good. So that's where our journey started, really, to really delve into this and take it from there. So that, I suppose, before the drivers came on board, we had to start reverse engineer and start with their workshops first, so that we could empower them with the training and the knowledge of what is now fitted and delivered on our trailers. So we've been doing workshop training now, with air brake systems now for the last few years, and we've been repeatedly sort of backing that up annually as new staff come on board, and really like to shout out a big thanks to Robbie Miners, Shane Pendergast, and Glenn Hamilton for their support and dedication behind us all the way here. And that came down to understanding the telematics side of it, how to plug in, how to check what is fitted, and that really brought us to, I suppose, a turning point of, okay, I get a new trailer, it's delivered to me, what next? Has that been through the pre-delivery stage? Has that system been commissioned, etc.? Is a smart, a dumb system working? And how does that talk to each other through the tech there? So we certainly learn a lot through that, through our procurement strategy and our fleet commissioning and onboarding. So, it's no different to all of our drivers and staff that we onboard. You need to induct them into your business, and that's what we found with our trailers. So that then led to more driver training sessions, where we really, through this project, the braking habits, really got into a one-on-one session in Warwick with Adam and Shane and explained the systems. Got down in there. You can see on that, we've got quite a mix of drivers in the room there, from young to old to career blokes. Some of the people in that photo have been working for Frasers, for 30 plus years. So, it's the age-old saying, you learn something new every day, and each and every one of those people, as hardened and seasoned and maybe inexperienced as rookies, walked away with a new sense of understanding on electronic braking systems and braking in general, and could all share with their experiences, on what works and what doesn't. So it's certainly was certainly a very authentic, genuine experience to get back to basics and have everyone in the room there to, learn all about it. Because unfortunately, more often than not, we get given something and away you go. How do you get the best use out of that if you're paying for something? And I don't want to see something that's fitted to our vehicles, that we've paid for, that sits there and is either turned off or creates dust or whatever that is, that could prevent a rollover, a life, a serious injury or accident down the road. So, we want that stuff to be working. We certainly, the drivers were very open and honest about our concerns, and therefore, we went into a trial, and it's hard in a big fleet such as ours, where we're not 100% fully EBS compliant. So, it's certainly not mandated that you have to go out and retrofit all your equipment. It's certainly recommended. And as equipment will turn over and that evolution, there will come a time where everything will be talking to one another. But certainly, we've certainly got a mix of dumb and smart equipment, and and only a handful of fully smart systems. And two of those that we could really hone into through this project was, we have some set runs that we do 5 days a week for about 50 weeks of the year, for hauling pigs on a very set route from the Gundawindi region into the South Burnett region of Queensland, at Kingaroy, through Dalby and other western towns. And it certainly has some challenges in that road there, twists and turns, there's some hills, sharp corners, and pigs are very heavy as well. So, 3 decks, and they all go to sleep. They don't necessarily move, but there's certainly a lot of weight in pork. And those drivers with those fully equipped systems were able to really participate in this and give us some serious value and some serious data in some of those corners that they travel on. And they were able to give us a direct feedback when we went up there on a road trip on, systems turned on versus off, and what they could feel in the road. So when there was a braking application happening in some certain corners, they could be, that we talk about with rollovers, trucks just don't, unless you drive off the side of a bank or a cliff, trucks just don't roll over. And 90% of the time, or would be probably more than 90% of the time, trucks and heavy combination vehicles roll over. It starts from the rear, and it's not until the very last second that the driver knows that they're about to roll over, and it's all too late because the rest is gone. So when something's happening back down behind you, it's already done that in-time intervention to do a brake application there. And that can be the 1K factor. 1 kilometre, you could go around the same corner, 100 times, go around there the 101st time at 1 or 2 kilometres faster. The load may be positioned a tiny bit different, the environment, and there's your rollover. So within that 1K.
I might actually just dive in briefly there. Athol mentioned that those pigs running up to Kingaroy. So we had real-time monitoring of the stability control events in that. There was one corner near the Bunya Mountains where about one day a fortnight, the driver would just trigger that level 1 alert that I mentioned earlier. It's just 5% brake just to push the shoes out in contact with the drums because the system is saying you're just a bit too quick. Now, Shane's been doing that run, the driver, for 14 years, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. So he has driven that corner a lot. He knows it like the back of his hand. He could immediately tell us. He knew exactly not just which corner, but where in the corner. There was an old road repair that had sunk slightly. So we went out and had a look. And actually, Athol and Glenn might not know this. I pulled him off to the side. I bought him lunch. And I said to him, hey, Shane, how much would you have to slow down on that corner to stop that once a fortnight stability event? And what he said was, about 2Ks. And I said to him, because you know that like Athol will stop ringing you and Glenn and I will stop hassling you if you just roll back that 2Ks so that the trailers are just that little bit more slow. It's not enough. It's just getting unweighting the suspension there. And I think since that little chat, I think he's had in the probably 12 months since that chat, I think he's had one event on that same little wobble on the corner. So the differences are small here. But if you go the other way, I would suggest, and I don't think Shane's ever going to roll on that corner because it's so familiar to him and the load is so consistent. But if he had another driver that was doing that run who went through as little as maybe 4Ks, like that's how narrow our margins are in this space, 4.6 meters high, 2.5 meters wide. Without that technology, another driver could literally just see Shane in the distance. There's often two combinations doing this run and decide he's going to push on a little bit to try and get back up behind him, roll through that corner as little as 4 or 5Ks more. And without this technology, the consequences could be catastrophic. And that's how small the margins are there. Sorry, I just want to jump in with that.
Well, little bit in that same example, Adam, if we went through with a cattle double, I'd probably want to be another 10K slower.
Oh, absolutely.
On that corner. So yeah, there's huge variables, with freight and rollovers, etc. And look, we all know. I don't have to tell anyone on this webinar today. Some of the conditions of our roads. Leave a lot to be desired. So it feels like you're in a boat in the Pacific Ocean some days, but that's it. So look, it was this experience to date has been certainly great for us and the rest of the industry, and it certainly taught us that we needed to learn more about this, but also demonstrate and share with the men and women behind the wheel of our equipment what they actually have now, what is fitted to that vehicle. And that was then, for me and in my role, was then, going across our fleet and, doing a stock take and sort of working backwards through the ADR changes over the last decade. I'm going to say from, back to, 2019, 2016 prior. So I think it's going to be about 2017, when we had the ADR 3508 and other changes that have come along, where we as livestock transport were exempt, but we still had to have some sort of equipment fitted, whether that be, load proportioning valves and obviously pass-through wiring. Pass-through wiring has been fitted onto our trailers for, I'm going to say, nearly a decade. For that there. So, and that enables pass-through wiring, enables trailers either front and backwards of that trailing equipment, if fitted with electronic braking systems, to be able to be plugged in, and that provides that electronic circuit back to the back trailers. We as operators here, like Adam said, with European, European technology, no different to fatigue and distraction technology in cab for the drivers, doesn't know how many trailers you have on behind you. So you can go anywhere from 19 metres as a single right back to 53.5 for a triple or a quad road train. So that those trailers need to talk, and they do now. And one of those things has been the evolution of the whole multi-volt system. But now I think we've, for this to operate correctly, we've got to be at 24 volt. And the manufacturers are slowly, the American manufacturers are now moving from 12 back up to 24, whether that be by design or inverters. But to get that full system to talk, especially in quad road trains and triples, you need that full power right through to the back. So we went through, mapped out, we probably had about 30 trailers and dollies, out of 150 that have some form of smart braking technology or pass-through wiring, including dollies, etc. So going through identifying what is what, but then also identifying moving forward what, as you can see from the sticker on the trailers there, what has a full TEB system. So that's a trailer electronic braking system, and ensuring that when it has a full system, that it must be plugged in into the prime mover, etc. And we learn a lot from that as well. And engineering wise, once again, the specification of how wiring is being fitted and how it is finished is absolutely crucial to this to work. It's the difference between a female socket on a prime mover that we've been driving around, and that's been on the prime mover now for years, but we've never had to use it. All of a sudden, I've now got a full set of TEBS trailers as a system, and that's the difference between that plug being installed on the prime mover horizontal or vertically. So if it's sitting vertically upside down like a socket, well, what's going to happen? All the dust full of water. It's stuff before we even start. So shifting that stuff so it's horizontal, so it doesn't allow the ingress of water and other contaminants in there, and ensuring that the quality of the cables are all intact and that the crimped ends, etc. It's a hard gig, as trailer builders, etc. And when they're fitting out and schematics and wiring systems, not only do you have electronic, you've got air, you've got fuel, you've got other power supplies, all sorts of things that are going on. If you look at that photo there, it's a bit cut off, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's six lanes of wiring, whether that be or air and electrical running through there, and that doesn't even include water or fuel compared to some trailers. So there's a lot of plumbing that goes in there, and there's probably working out what's been cut and shut, for example, to fit in there versus being completed in full. And probably about me, Adam.
Just to build on 2 points that Athol mentioned there. So the reason for these stickers, if you've gone and retrofitted pass-through cables, you've now got EBS sockets on each end of the trailer. But if every trailer in that combination is actually a dumb trailer that's just got pass-through on it, well, then we actually don't need to burden the drivers with plugging it all in, because there is no TEB system to power. And that's why having the stickers becomes important, because at the outside looking, you see an EBS socket on the front, but is that a pass-through, or is that a trail that has EBS fitted? So I really like that initiative. It's simple. I haven't asked Athol what he spent on stickers, but I don't think it would be massive compared to the cost of the events or the cost of the broader equipment. And it's just it's those little touches. It's nuances like that where you don't have to hassle your drivers to plug in stuff where it's not making any difference, because they can see the times when they need to. You made their life a little bit easier. You got a bit more credible with them, because they will recognize that you're jerking them around, making them plug in stuff where there's nothing actually getting plugged in, right? That harms your credibility in your relationship. So there's a real elegance. That's why I was really keen to include that sticker in this presentation. And the other thing I'll say in this is learn from each other. Find those little gems, like if you've gone in the pass-through route, thinking about this little piece here to save that time, save that bit of effort, and find there's going to be another dozen little gems like that. And the other part
to add on to that, Adam, is also, it's not only a sticker identifying the trailers, but that also, I put that information into our fleet register for that there, and also, updated our service schedules as well. So our workshop checklists and things for the driver, if the trailer is fitted, in our case, 90% of this is not applicable, but for the 10% of the trailers that we do have, and every trailer that we buy moving forward and prime mover has this. So, like I say, that journey, we will get that complete system. It could be 5-10 years away, but it will happen, and I can guarantee you by then there'll be something else on top of this that will come into the fleets and into the industry. But that's one sticker. There's also the one that the manufacturer puts on. You can see down there in the bottom left. But there's another vitally important sticker as well, and that is the system identification sticker. Now, that is someone will know what this is, but it's a foil tamper-proof sticker. And the minute, if you pull that off, it will leave a set of fish scales behind as residue underneath. So it's a security embedded, and that is what can be printed out in the workshop on a small printer when the file has been put in the EBS system for the trailer, and that must be affixed to that trailer there. So you can't just go and print out or copy a generic sticker and go and sort of plaster that over your trailers. It is trailer and VIN number specific. And that is what some of the authorities and the inspectors will also be looking for there as well.
Excellent. And the other point I wanted to focus on was that commissioning space. Be really one of the ways we will make this less painful into the future is by setting ourselves up for success. If you're buying new equipment, and there's a guide, I'll touch on in the next slide in a moment, on this process, those little 5%ers, not having EBS sockets facing upwards, filling up with, I think, honestly, dust and water are in the livestock space some of the less problematic things that they're going to fill up with. EBS sockets need to be horizontal or facing 15 degrees downwards so that they can drain. That might reduce the burden of system failures by 25% just on that on its own. And that cabling and routing piece, looking to your trailers and saying, how do we better protect that cable? How do we make sure that the routing that it's running through is big enough that we can run pre-terminated cables with beautiful over-molded connectors rather than having to cut and shut cabling where we create another failure point? All these little, 3-5% changes is how we go from a space where the workshop guys probably don't really love this technology today to a space where it's working reliably and the maintenance burden isn't killing us.
We're now seeing, also, Adam, we're now seeing across equipment on the roads. If anyone's noticed it recently, you will, especially in the tanker and dangerous goods space, you will definitely see a lot of road trains now and trailers getting around now with a forward-facing green light at the front of the trailer. I've been on the road sort of every night this week. And I've been noticing a lot of that. So if that light is green, that means that the system is operational on all three trailers.
And I got to say, one of my personal quests in this space is better integration into existing telematics providers to have status feeds. Basically a health check of the EBS built into existing telematics platforms so that your ops people can see when things are going wrong. There are some really great auxiliary systems, which is what we used from ZF Scalar on those pig trailers we discussed earlier, which is brilliant because it works everywhere. But the challenge there is it does mean another system for your personnel to integrate with.
And I think the biggest take home that I can share with anyone here today, Adam, and it will be in the resources that is on the ALRTA website for this, and but is don't accept crap. Things must be delivered to us as a consumer or as an operator, ready to go the first time, the minute that equipment arrives into your depot. So, none of this going backwards and forwards. We need to all lean on and push back on the manufacturers and the suppliers to this to ensure that we are getting delivered a product that is ready for service and fit for duty.
Which is a really nice segue there into what have we made, what's available there now to support industry off the back of this project. We've quite intentionally tried for quite a journey on this project. We know we're starting from a space where a lot of people have had adverse experiences, whether that's drivers, fleet owners in the workshop. So the first part is really flagging that this stuff matters. This might be the difference between getting a friend or a colleague back home at the end of the day like nothing happened, versus going and visiting them in hospital or worse. So there's a lot of materials. There's what are intended as social tiles, but if you want to steal them and you drop them into your staff newsletters, use them in your own closed employee Facebook group, whatever your channels of communication that you have with your people are, grab them, use them. That's what they exist for. That's where they're intended to be used. Then the core of the project are resources to help uplift knowledge across the industry on this material. So there's a guide called Breaking Habits that really covers the whole gamut, from workshop, fleet managers, how we talk about this with our people. And then there's supporting resources that go deeper into specific areas. So we've sort of touched on already, that's not shown there, but the commissioning and fleet purchasing space. How do you have the discussion with whether it's your prime mover dealer, your trailer builder, when you're ordering the next piece of equipment, around what your expectations are and what you should be thinking about? Well, you might not know what you want to communicate, and those guides should help you there. And then how do you confirm in that commissioning process that you got what you asked for? What should you be looking at, when that equipment is presented to you? And there's a suite of materials across there, and then stuff that's meant to reinforce it. We know that having that one chat with the drivers, I really enjoyed. We did 3 sessions at Fraser's, Shane and I, over 2 days with about 64, 65 drivers in total across the sessions. I really enjoyed it. They were just the drivers were so engaged, and they gave it to me at times, deservedly so, particularly around bad driving experience, brakes that were too touchy and were bad for animal welfare, but they listened as well, and it was really good. But one session does not a change make. So a lot of materials on reinforcement, things you can print out as posters to stick up on the wall in the lunchroom, bits they can look back on later. We've got a toolbox talk kit. So if you want to run a session at your depot on this material and then reinforce it with some posters or handouts that you can give later, or you can drop it into a staff email, use it the way that suits your business. If you're an owner-driver, read it yourself. You're not going to run a toolbox talk kit. If you're a big fleet like a Fraser's, a session like we ran with those drivers could be the right fit for you, but it's not our place to tell you how to do it. You guys know your business better than we do. So all of those resources are available on the ALRTA website. You go to projects and breaking habits, or you can just Google ALRTA breaking habits. And beyond that, before we hand across to the Q&A, we have a few more pieces in development. Kane Hawkins from Hawkins Transport, who many of you will know, we should have a case study out there reasonably quickly. I hope to have that one turned around in the next 2 weeks. I interviewed the wonderful Peter Edmonds from Narracourt down in South Australia for another case study there. Their fleet, which as he acquired it, was a very early adopter of this technology. So it's quite mature, and it shows that you can get out the other side of that transitional pain to a place where it's pretty reliable and pretty stable and pretty well respected and adopted by the drivers. But I got 2 more that came up from really fantastic chats at the ALRTA SA, those 10 days ago there. One, I'm going to chat with some of our brake vendors in this space, is a simple guide to what tools you might want to have in your arsenal to support this technology, starting with the really basic stuff, a basic multimeter and a socket tester, this sort of space, through to the more significant equipment, workshop laptops with software to talk to different systems. And then the final one is a guide to recognizing and how to describe what poor trailer compatibility. So when either the trailers aren't braking enough, and so you've got the prime mover trying to stop an entire B triple combination, and it's going to be hard on both worse braking performance and hard on the brakes on the prime mover, or the reverse, which is what we'd seen and heard very, very strongly delivered. They did not mince words from the drivers at Frasers, two of them in particular that had experience at other fleets. It wasn't in their time at Frasers on trailers that were way too touchy. Look at the brakes pedal sideways, and all of a sudden you've got all the cattle being thrown against the headboard. And what I'm trying to set up there is to arm you and your drivers to recognize the likely symptoms so that you can have more effective conversations, particularly to your trailer builders, so they in turn can have more effective communications up to their brake system vendors. Many of you may know, but for those who don't, your trailer builders are almost certainly just buying a kit of brake components that have been certified by another vendor. And we need to get the most effective flow of information from the people in the driver's seat to the people that are designing and calibrating those systems at the other end, so that we can get to a happier place and start to see the best compatibility between units. So I'm hoping to have that out.
Unfortunately, it's not just getting your specification and it's set and forget and hoping for the best. This will always be a journey of continuous improvement on, and driver feedback whenever you get new equipment into your fleet. So yeah, it's about that continuum. And look, have we completely solved the snappiness, etc.? No, we haven't. But we're continually working on that to refine that.
Yeah, and one thing, the worst thing you can do, like, it's my big tip on that, is don't disregard your driver feedback. Like, don't, if you get silence, that's a warning that they might not be, you might have already burnt them and you don't have that rapport already. But if they come in and they're pissed off, that's an endorsement. I was so impressed, and I had the highest level of respect of the two drivers in particular that raised that oversensitive snappy braking from the trailers, because you could hear their passion for the animal welfare. What they were essentially saying, and they weren't far from saying in these words, which is, we are more concerned about the welfare and safety of the animals in the back of our trailers than we are about our own safety. That I think it was a credit to them, and the challenge is to us as an industry, and we're looking particularly to our equipment providers and their component providers, is to deliver them the experience where we get to have both, where we get to have the good animal welfare outcomes and the safety outcomes as well.
Like that's look, that's trucking, Adam, and that's our industry, and we love nothing more than a good experience, and we need to have that. Because we all talk about what looks bad, but what looks good. And if the animals and the drivers are getting thrown right around all day, regardless, dealing with the roads are one thing, but then if a truck's reacting in a negative way as well, it's going to have a compounding effect on everyone. So we've got to get the best out of this for our people and our freight.
And well, no point paying for it. It doesn't work. We'll jump into the Q&A there.
Yeah, we might move into them, Adam. And Athol, just congratulations on that lived experience demonstration there, mate. That was fantastic. I think that's the benefit of this project, having real people, and it's not a desktop project. You've actually lived it, so well done. Adam, there's a couple of online ones there first. You want to go to them?
Yeah, so question here. I work for a fleet where orange EBS warnings are common and unfortunately accepted as normal. Should these orange warnings be rectified/reported, and how does it affect the system's operations? Knowing the fleet and the operations in question there, yes, very much so. That I have to defer to our brake experts in the chat potentially on orange versus red status, almost certainly in a Volvo prime mover. There, but knowing the occupation in question, having functioning, it might be the one occupation where livestock has a greater rollover prevalence and risk than livestock, without saying too much there.
Adam, it's certainly, first and foremost, our journey to date, regardless of TEP systems being fitted to trailers, ABS has been fitted to our prime movers now for many years. And it's certainly, that's one thing that our drivers are all over. And, I know Pendy and a few others, you've got to get them lights off the dash. because it means there's a problem somewhere for something, and it could be very minor, but it's a sign that your truck's putting its hand up to say something's wrong.
And next one, which came through via the chat, was from Andre. How do you know if your trailer manufacturers or maintenance providers are equipped to install and calibrate EBS? And how do we calibrate the trailers that are braking harshly due to bad compatibility in EBS systems? Really fantastic question. And actually, Glenn Hamilton already touched on part of the answer there in the chat, which is, as part of your commissioning process, you should be asking for the end-of-line printouts for your equipment as part of the handover. Basically, no printout, no acceptance, and you should get, basically, in my view, anytime something's coming out of the workshop, you should be having a fault-free printouts of the status report out of the system as well, to show that everything was working when it left whoever is doing the in-service maintenance as well. In terms of the harshness, this is where it gets a bit complicated. The best solution here is to go back to the trailer builder, and in turn for them to go back to their brake system vendor with those concerns, and for them to unpack what is driving that concern. And it's nuanced. It's not just, is the trailer compliant, because you can have, and this is what that guide to recognizing poor compatibility will try to explain more elegantly, is you can just have a compliant prime mover that's at one extreme of the brake compatibility limits, and a compliant trailer that's at the other extreme, and the driving experience there is not, in my view, fit for purpose, but it is compliant. And so compliance alone will not solve this. What we need systems that give a good user experience, and that will require we're more likely to see movement from the trailer brake system vendors than we are from the prime mover space. So we need to have those discussions and build that rapport. If your trailer builder tells you that they can't get sufficiently good service from their brake system vendor to address those problems, you need to tell them that they need a different brake system vendor, or you're going to go to a different trailer vendor. That's where this needs to escalate to, because if you will not talk with your wallet, you will get whatever equipment you get. And I won't pull punches there. But the biggest thing, I don't think anyone's setting out to make bad brake kits. I think they're all setting out to make the best damn brake kits they can and take great pride in it. But very few of them will have a direct conduit of feedback from people that are actually driving the end equipment. And that's what we need to build. So have that chat and make it clear that's what you're looking for. You're looking for positive outcomes, not blame. So next one there, Glenn made an observation around those EBS pass-through stuff. And he says that, yeah, the best practice to plug them in if you can. If there is no EBS units anywhere in the combination, there really isn't a need to plug them in. But the moment there is any one EBS unit, everything forwards of that unit needs to be plugged in. And in fleets where it's prevalent, like if you've only got 20% of your fleet where there's no EBS, you just plug everything in all the time. But where we are today, where we're going to see a lot of fleets where it might only be 10% of the combinations, making your drivers plug them in all the time is an option. But if you can have stickers that say this is pass-through only versus this is where EBS is, and they know what that means, or the stickers explain what that means, then that just reduces where they're plugging in stuff where it's not actually achieving anything. But fair point there, Glenn. Andre asks around, how do we get the data on how many trigger events? Is there an easier way than just plugging into each trailer and downloading? Yes, Andre, I will take that question offline and chat with you there. This data is rich. I will circulate, probably with the wrap-up email to this, a video with a couple of videos we did with Shane Pendergast, one with Alan Pincott, and one with a gentleman by the name of Daryl Hutton, all talking about how we get this data, what it tells us, and how we can use that data to have really powerful conversations with our drivers. That was the original design of this project. We just realized that we needed to take a step back and actually get the technology working reliably before we started getting too excited by the data. Because if the tech's not working at all the data tells you is how long it hasn't been working for. But really fantastic question, Andre, and I will take this offline and answer that there. And great observation here from Angus, who was one of my great chats in South Australia. That he still had trailers go over with EBS. Yes, you absolutely will. This is a powerful technology but it's not a cure-all or a silver bullet. Try hard enough and you will still manage to get there. That said, most of the time where I see trailers in our insured portfolio that go over with EBS fitted, it wasn't working or working properly. You see things where you go and plug in post-event and you find that it's having low voltage events every 20 seconds because of some hidden wiring issue that hadn't been resolved. That goes back to the discussion earlier about orange lights.
Q&A, Adam. Russell's got a very good question, and I don't think any of us have got the answer for it, but he's certainly raised a very valid point.
It is. And I'll be a bit careful here and find the right words. So Russell, we need HVS funding for training for all roadworthy accredited workshops. We need to uplift the service and maintenance capability and the skill in the workshops building the trailers. It's end to end. So the Federal Department of Infrastructure has mandated this under ADRs 35 and 38. Their own guidelines, or the guidelines from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, say they have to have a implementation plan to reliably achieve whatever they've said is going to happen in their cost-benefit analysis. So that's a bit wordy, but basically, long and short, their own policy says they should have had a training package to support this, and they didn't. Obviously, my time machine doesn't work, so we can't fix that historically. But the big lesson for us is when other equivalent future technologies are coming down the line, we need to point to this experience and the work that we as an industry had to do trying to retrofit this. I think there's an opportunity to run regional training workshops in our key transport hubs, the Albury Wodongas, your Woggers, that sort of space around these technologies. And it's not just the workshops, as in not just commercial workshops, it's in-house workshops like Fraser's, it's the trailer builders, it's the repairers, it's the dealerships. There's a whole cohort of technical people that need uplift in this space for this to be where it needs to be to get our people home safe.
Adam, if I can just add to that, there's quite a few people from within that industry who are actually online here today. I'm sure they'll be taking some notes and looking at the data. We also now have some data that we as an industry body can work towards and try and G up the department in relation to the implementation failures. So that's something we can work together, I think, as well. Now we've got the data here is that's the evidence we need to lobby a bit harder too.
And the question here from Greg Forbes around, do we have any stats on changes in driver attitudes since we started the project? No, we didn't, but it'd be interesting, particularly for the Fraser's space, to do some subjective feedback on what they have taken away from the journey. So maybe we can look into that, Athol, both in the workshop and the driver group. I certainly had really positive feedback after those Yarn in the Yard sessions where, I was remember the exact words that the gentleman used. I think it was something to the effect of, you're not quite the dickhead I thought you were going to be, or something to that effect. Pardon my language there. It's a direct quote. Said with a smile and in very positive faith. And that's the value of having that open and honest communication. We never promised any silver bullets to that room. We acknowledged their frustrations, their pain, their bad experiences. And we just said, look, this is not going to be easy, but it is worth doing for these reasons. And this is our plan. And if it doesn't work, we'll reconvene and work from there. And I think that's a really good model to follow. And it's actually covered in, there's a whole guide in the resources on having these discussions with your people.
Okay, I think we've got about 2 minutes left, guys. So is there any last minute questions we need to address? I'll take it. Look, and the boys, and certainly reach out via email, social media, or feel free to give us a call post this session. Adam, you'll be available to help out. I know you're really leading this project. Probably Athol and Adam, can I just, with 30 seconds each, a take-home line or one last message that you would give to the listeners?
We need to take each other on the journey.
For me, talk with each other. The learnings, we either learn each lesson here individually, or you talk to your association contacts, you talk to your industry contacts, and you learn from each other. And that's comfortably the better path.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. You've actually really delivered something powerful. Well, I think 10 years ago when the EBS discussion was coming into livestock transport, all it was about go away and don't ever come back. The discussion certainly evolved, and that's evolution of our industry. It's great to see. I think we're a leader. There's so many other industry groups that would be using EBS, but we're the first to go to this level. So thank you so much. Thank you to HVSI for the funding to support this, and hopefully we'll continue the journey. Thanks everyone for coming online, and enjoy your weekend. Cheers.